Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Did Shakespeare. I'm that Shakespeare girl, Cassidy Cash, and this week we're diving into the world of astrology and science with William Shakespeare. Romeo and Juliet were star-crossed lovers. Helena and Parolles argued about Mars and All's Well That Ends Well, and Jupiter descends from the stage in thunder and lightning in Cymbeline. With all of these references to stars and planets in Shakespeare's works, this week we're asking, did Shakespeare study science? During the Renaissance, which, yes, did happen in England as well as in Italy, there was a huge focus on what today's minds would probably call a liberal arts education. The prevailing belief was that humans, the earth, our emotions, and how all of this plays together were not only connected to each other, but that they were influenced or even directed by the alignment of the stars and planets, and that all of this information could be quantified or explained provided you had the right understanding of numbers and words to do that. Famously, a man named Pythagoras from around 500 BC had this same theory, and he developed what would eventually be called numerology, which was the study of describing life using numbers. He sought to describe the world and the people in it using numbers and the numbers' relationships to different things. He developed what would go on to be called the four humors, which if you study Shakespeare for even a blink of an eye, you will come across the idea of the four humors in Shakespeare's plays. And that's because to people of early modern England, the four humors influenced everything. It was central to their understanding of the human body, of emotion, why people do what they do, to health and medicine, and all kinds of philosophies about life. It's why practices like bloodletting became so popular in England during Shakespeare's lifetime, because they literally thought if you had an imbalance of humors in your body, that they could get rid of the bad humor by simply cutting you open and letting it out. It was the logical follow-on from believing that your blood contained a humor and that the humor controlled how you acted. And that's why this idea of questioning why things go on and understanding why people do what they do and what controls the events that occur in life were all questions that philosophers of Shakespeare's day were asking and that we continue to ask today. But they were asking and answering them in Shakespeare's lifetime completely in force. And the Renaissance society of which Shakespeare was a premier member were asking these in a very particular way. With such lines from The Tempest, like when Prospero says, "We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep." It's easy to understand that William Shakespeare was not just a good philosopher, but he was a good poet. And William Hatz makes this statement about Shakespeare in 1817, just 200 years after Shakespeare had died. For Shakespeare's life, though, they believed that the stars and the planets and the astrology around them impacted your health and your humor and what it was possible for you to accomplish. But where did Shakespeare learn all of this? As we've talked medicine, we've talked health, stars, and planets. William Shakespeare was a theater man. He was an artist and a playwright. Where did he learn all of this science? Well, it turns out that there's two good answers to this question. The first one is that he was educated at King Edward's grammar school, which the grammar school would use textbooks from people like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. And so he was reading these massive philosophers. Why was he reading these massive philosophers? Well, one of the ways that they taught Latin and Greek in school was for the students to memorize parts of plays and recite them. They spent a lot of time translating the plays from Latin to English and from English to Latin, and they would give speeches from plays because people like Socrates and Plato were also playwrights in their own right. Euripides is another example of a Greek playwright. These were a huge facet of Greek culture, and so when they're studying them in school in Stratford, William Shakespeare is literally getting an education in famous Greek theater. In fact, at the end of the year, each year, William Shakespeare's class would perform a play to demonstrate what they had learned from the previous school year. But grammar school wasn't the only place that William Shakespeare would have learned science. Reading was a major part of Shakespeare's life. And you can see this in the fact that a lot of his source material are books from before, whether it was going back and getting copies of Holinshed's Chronicles or Hall's Chronicles to read about the histories and form his history plays, or he was reading Greek and Latin and Roman theater and playing off of the stories that came before him. And these people did great plays, and so Shakespeare took their plays and made them into ones of his own. All of these sources were written documents, and they were published, and you could go. There were markets. I believe it's St. Paul's Cathedral had a big market there where you could buy books. Reading was considered an essential part of working and being successful. You had to base your stories on something, and Shakespeare would read to learn ideas to then write his plays. The wide availability of books opened up a brand new world of things like plagiarism and false attribution, but it also opened up a huge market in the creative world over what kind of stories we can tell. It would lead to the creation of some of the world's first libraries, and tons of opportunities where playwrights like William Shakespeare could learn a great deal about complicated subjects like law, medicine, history, and more that are all demonstrated in his plays. That's it for this week. I'm Cassidy Cash. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something new about the Bard. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe. As a Shakespearean, you know that we love our friends. So please hit subscribe and become our friend. Over at CassidyCash.com, I have put together a life map of the history of William Shakespeare, which I'm quite proud of. It walks through all 52 years of his life, and it shows when each of his plays were written and what was going on in England at the time. Because I'm an American, it also includes a few facts about the New World and the colonies, people like Pocahontas and Johannes Kepler, Galileo, and where those people's lives overlap with William Shakespeare's are all included on this life map. You can buy this map in my Etsy shop for $7, but if you sign up for that Shakespeare Girls newsletter, which goes out every Monday, I send out new updates on what we're doing here at That Shakespeare Girl, you can get this life map completely free from me to say thank you for joining the newsletter. So go on over there to CassidyCash.com and download your copy of the illustrated life map of William Shakespeare, and I'll see you next week.